This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
The opinions on this program are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WPSL. WPSL does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WPSL. Legal questions? Ask a lawyer. Give us a call at 340-1590, 340-1590 here at the studios of WPSL. And Ask a Lawyer with your host, attorney Stuart M. Address.
Good morning. I'm Stuart Address, and from Palm Bay to the Palm Beaches, the Caribbean, the Mediterranean, and the Pacific Seas, it's Ask a Lawyer.
We're number one on Grand Bahama.
We're number one on Grand Bahama? Okay. Yeah. We'll see if I get any calls from there. And speaking of calls, folks, it's 340-1590.
Are you licensed in the Bahamas?
No.
But, just checking.
That doesn't mean I can't give a uninformed opinion.
Sure.
That doesn't mean I can't fake it until I make it.
Oh,
but, you know, that's why they call it practicing law. I'm just trying. You know, we never quite get it right, and we just keep practicing until we're done. I'm going to tell you. You wanted lawyer jokes.
Why is it lawyers and doctors just practice?
Because it's never just right. So, you know, old lawyers never die. They just lose their appeal.
Oh.
And you know that you don't ever want to watch a lawyer preparing a legal memorandum. It's like watching how a hot dog or a sausage is made.
Yep.
Because lawyers do it in their briefs.
Oh. Oh, boy.
And I don't mean to get, you know, NC-17 or anything, but lawyers do it orally and gesticulate simultaneously. You asked for it. You know, don't ask for things if you don't want to get them.
Okay, all right.
You know, I mean, hey.
If anybody has any good lawyer jokes, call us.
Yeah, come on in. Call for lawyer jokes. If you come into my office, folks, in the reception area on a coffee table where coffee is never served, you'll find a book, Lawyers and Other Reptiles.
Oh, no.
It's really a good book. It's a funny book. I don't usually make you wait long, but I'm not like a doctor. I don't usually make you wait long if you have an appointment, but if you can get in a few pages of Lawyers and Other Reptiles.
It's good reading.
It's worth it.
I love it. Lawyers and Other Reptiles?
Yeah, that's right. That's the name of the book.
Oh, my God.
Look it up on Amazon. I bet you it's there. I mean, it's an old book. I've had it for quite a while, but I bet you it's probably still in print or somebody's selling used copies.
Still in the top 10 of the New York Times.
Yeah. There's some good jokes in there.
Oh, my goodness.
Anyway, so for the third time in 230 years, we have a Senate trial of impeachment of the President of the United States. Now, I'm going to, for the moment at least, unless somebody calls and forces me into it, stay away from the political leanings here and just make a couple observations. Oh, here comes a call. Somebody's going to push me into it. I'm telling you. Who do we got here? We got John on line one. Hello, John. Dear John.
How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. Happy New Year, Counselor.
Happy New Year to you too. What's up?
I thought I'd start off the New Year right.
Excuse me, let me interrupt. Breaking news: Lawyers and Other Reptiles. $12.89 on Amazon. According to my mommy. No, I'm sorry. According to my sister.
Oh my.
I'm sorry, John. Go ahead.
It's okay. I thought I'd buy a house, and when I went to go sign the contract, my realtor, who I liked very much, threw this notice of, disclosures in front of me. And I wasn't having a very good day that day because I wasn't sleeping well. And I told her, I says, I didn't sleep well last night because, when you buy a house, you worry about making the right decision. And I says, do I need to read this? Is there anything important in here? And she says, no, it's just pretty standard. I said, cookie cutter? She said, yes.
Just a couple $100,000 here or there?
What's that?
Just a couple $100,000 here or there?
Well, it's just, the way it's phrased, it says on the heading, important information and disclosures relative to the purchase of real estate. And on page 2, it is in bold print, and I didn't read it. It says that in addition to the commission to be paid by a seller, you agree to pay blah, 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 the company, a fee of $395 at closing.
Those are shipping and handling fees.
What's that?
Those are shipping and handling fees.
Oh, come on.
Yeah. Go on. I'm in rare form today.
Yeah, Stuart really is in rare form this morning.
So, I've been a seller for many years in Florida, and I've always paid a commission.
Right.
And now, that's usually the way it works. You get hit as the seller, and when you're the buyer, you don't get hit.
Well, usually the seller and the buyer share the commission.
What's that?
No, that's wrong. I don't know why. You're right. The seller, that's right. When I sold my house, that's right. I got hit with the commission, yeah.
Oh, yeah. You got to hire someone to sell your home, and you pay them the 6%, or they split it, whatever way they want, but it's 6% you're paying. So as the buyer, I'm thinking to myself, geez, and the trouble is I haven't bought any real estate in about 16 years. So I called around other realtors I know, and they go, yeah, about 2010 they started this stuff, and some of the big companies throw this at you. So my question to you is, since I'm a stupid idiot and I didn't read it because I trusted my realtor when I said, is there anything important in here? And she didn't disclose the commission when I asked her that. Do I have anything to stand on?
Oh, my goodness. Yes and no, actually. But like my mother, you have a $300+ case, and unlike from my mother, I'm not sending out a 4-page letter and going into five exchanges of emails. Do you have a case? Do you have anything to do about it? Well, first of all, you have competing doctrines here that fight you. One way benefits you, one way hurts you. Who knows what a small claims court judge might do. One doctrine is you are presumed, by operation of law, to have read these documents that they say you've read them when you sign them. So that works against you. On the other hand, if your realtor said, no, there's nothing important here, don't worry about it, that is either a innocent misrepresentation of fact or a deliberate fraudulent statement. And so there is an argument for, I didn't read it because I was told there was no need to read it. It was boilerplate. I signed it, and lo and behold, I got to pay this person's company who told me not to read it, $300 and whatever, $95. Yeah, there's an argument there. I mean, a good, crafty lawyer can fashion an argument there. How it actually plays out if you were to go to a small claims court, I don't really know. But then again, it doesn't hurt to send an email or a letter, to the realtor and say, hey, look, this is what I was told. I was surprised to find this fee here. I'd like it refunded to me.
Could John just talk to her rather than send something in writing?
Sure, you could. And if you're really not going to follow through on, the implied threat or the poker bluff, yeah, you could talk to her or whomever, up the chain. But
well, that's what I was intending to do. My question was, is this common practice, since I've been out of the real estate market for the last 16 years, I was told that not all do this, but have you heard about this?
I haven't, but I don't really do real estate law. I don't do transactional real estate law.
Yeah. The way it works is they don't charge me until the closing.
Right.
They throw this in the closing.
To me, it's like an auto dealer who throws in the $999 fee that is pre-printed on the purchase order. And, you go in and you say, I'm not paying this. This is part of your overhead. And they said, well, we can't delete it. It's pre-printed on the contract. And I've said to them, I don't care if it's pre-printed in blood. I'm not paying it. So if it has to stay on the contract, I don't mind if it stays on the contract. Give me $999 somewhere else. Take it off my trade. Take it off the sale price. I'm not paying it. Now, in the early days, I got away with that.
Well, you just mentioned contract. I mean, if they give me a page that's titled Important Information and Disclosures relative to the purchase of your real estate, does that count a fee in there as a disclosure?
Well, it's a disclosure because it's something you have to pay.
Okay. It's just that I wish they had said on the front there, commission or fees or transaction fees.
Isn't it also in? I know this much. Sometimes when you know a little bit, you're dangerous. I know this much about residential that you get a RESPA statement. Is that what it is? That shows all the money to and from the buyer and the seller.
Well, yeah, your title company will give you that.
Isn't that fee on that statement?
Well, it will be. Eventually.
Okay,
when
because my understanding is your only obligation is to pay what's on that statement.
Yeah. Well, the title company girl I've worked with for years, and I made her aware of this after the fact because after I read it finally a week later, when I should have read it when I was signing it, but I brought it to her attention, and she says, yeah, there are companies that charge transaction fees. Another nice word for commission.
I will give one hint to you and to anybody else. I bought a new home about 3.5 years ago. I absolutely insisted on seeing the paperwork ahead of closing because I wanted time to read it without reading it under pressure.
Sure.
And I think anybody can say, I want to see this paperwork before I show up at a table.
Will they give it to you?
Yeah.
If they don't, I would seriously question whether or not something funny is going on. They have the paper. Okay, so sometimes they get the paperwork at the last moment. But I would still want that paperwork an hour or two ahead of time, not sitting at that conference table where they're expecting me to sign everything. And I really don't get a chance to read anything. I'd like enough time, even if I'm the average Joe, like I would be if I was signing a plumbing or a real estate. I am the average Joe. I'm not an expert in that stuff. I'd want enough time to read through it and make sure there's nothing there that I really want to question. Because it might make a big deal.
Well, that's a good point because I've always done that in the past. In fact, this title company that I use, and I won't mention their name, but they're a national company, and the girl is very good. I always say, I need this 48 hours before closing. And if there are a few documents that you don't have available, I need it at least, like you said, a couple hours before the closing.
And I think that makes sense.
It is important to get that because, like you said, you don't want to be under pressure. Oh, sign here, sign here, and all this other nonsense. But with this document they threw in front of me, they didn't put it on the front page, the fee. They put it, of course, on the second page. And, if they had put it in bold print on the first page, I would have noticed it right away. But that's my fault. Me bad. May I ask you one other question?
Sure, John.
I have a friend who's lived in my community for a while. They're a renter. They came up to me because they know I've lived here for like 20 years, and they said, well, they got verbal notification, nothing in writing, that they are not going to. They told their landlord that they are not going to allow them to renew their lease.
Okay.
Now, is there any? I've always heard of tenant landlord rights. Is there any a governmental organization that I can direct them to?
Why isn't their lease going to be renewed if it's a prohibited reason?
When they went to the property manager, they said they had 20 pages of violations. And I said, well, did they ever notify you of any of these violations? And she said, no. He said, well, they don't have a leg to stand on because, first of all, they got to notify.
Stop for a second. They may not have a leg to stand on vis-a-vis the owner and imposing those violations and fines, etc. But not renewing a lease that is expiring, there is no legal obligation to renew a lease. Now, if you're not renewing it because the people are African American or they just came over from one of those S-hole countries, to bring back some old phraseology, then yeah, I think there are some rights there. But if
Well,
they
let
just
me clarify. I'm talking about the association, not the landlord.
No, I
The
know.
landlords
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
In these communities, very often, the bylaws or rules and regulations say that tenants have to be approved by the association. And if that is part of the nomenclature of that association, that community, then if the association has the right to say to the landlord, we don't approve of the renewal of this lease, unless they're doing it for a prohibited reason, or unless the landlord has some right, some standing to complain, I don't think the tenant has, any rights there. Unless they're violating a law, unless there's a prohibited reason there that they're choosing not to renew. But if they say you have violations, even if you've never noticed it, I don't see why they would have to renew it.
So they don't have to notify them about any violation.
I think to enforce the violations they do, but to choose not to renew an expiring lease, I don't think they have to do that.
So it's completely discretionary. There is no recourse for if the landlord wants to keep the tenant and the tenant wants to keep renting, the association can step in and not even show cause.
There may be recourse in the rules and regulations and in the bylaws for the owner of the property to challenge a decision of the association. But I don't think the tenant has that right.
No, I'm sure they don't, and I told them that. I said, your landlord can go to bat for you, but your landlord has to do that because he's the owner of the property.
I think that's correct.
The association.
Yeah, and could it be, too, I know there's some areas of St. Lucie and Martin counties where the association has passed rules that doesn't allow renters.
Well, that is also to an extent permissible too. There are towns like in Vero Beach, I don't think you can rent for less than a certain period of time because they don't want it to become, this hotspot of quote unquote transient renters.
Right.
And that has been held up under challenge in court. So probably, a community can say we're not allowing renters. I've never actually researched that. That's just my off the cuff, guesstimate. But, here I would say a tenant doesn't really have any rights because they're not a member of the association. The owner is. And unless the owner has a right to challenge, I would say the tenant probably is out of luck. Now, if the tenant finds out that, the owner is being told you can't renew this lease because we only allow 3 African American couples on every block, and, okay, then I think you as a tenant have a right to intervene and you probably have a legitimate cause of action.
Yes, I would say so.
But, the average, we're just not renewing your lease, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, John. Take care. Have a good week.
Wow. That's
those are, this happens. And in fact, I got a call just this week in my office, and Sadia will verify it. So call her at the office and 781-8003. She'll verify this. We got a call this week from somebody who says, I've been living as a tenant in this association for like 3 years. They never asked me to fill out an application. They never asked to do a background check on me. Everything just went through peachy keen. And now all of a sudden they're saying, I have to fill out an application and pay an application fee and pay a fee so that they can do a background check, or they won't let the landlord renew my lease.
Whoa.
And my response again saying, I haven't researched that, and you can come in for consultation, but my gut reaction is they can do that because the bylaws say they have the right to request an application and do a background check. And the fact that they didn't do one for year 1, year 2, or year 3 doesn't mean that the brand new lease for year 4 doesn't allow them to do it. This person didn't really want to have to pay the fee because they've been there for 3 years already. And I said, I can understand that, but I think the association likely has the right.
Wow. Okay. That's different. Huh. Well, there again, the association may have changed a bunch of rules.
That's true, too, and when they're changed may be important. And why they're changed may be important.
Yeah, that's true, too.
So, going back to, I was going to say, I'm going to try not to be political, but I do want to make an observation from things I saw yesterday on TV.
Was there something on TV yesterday?
Yeah, and there's just very little,
Oh, yeah.
It's all repeats.
Yeah.
It's all breaking news,
Maury
over and
Povich.
over and over. It's breaking news.
Maury and Oprah.
Yeah. For the third time in 230 years in this country, we now have a Senate sitting as a trial, a jury, for the impeachment of the President of the United States. It's the second time in 40 years, but only the third time in 230. Just think of that for a moment. While other countries around the world go through monstrous upheavals, parliamentary democracies, which are good democracies, votes of no confidence, governments resign, run for new elections.
Fist fights in the Senate.
Right, happens all the time. In our country, we routinely have peaceful elections, peaceful transfers of power, no matter how much you may like or dislike whoever is in the Congress and the Senate and the White House. But now we do have an effort, most likely to be unsuccessful, but an effort to remove the President of the United States. And I'm not even going to get to names, because if I get into names, then I'm going to bring out my own personal biases.
I just want the trial to go 6 months and see all
Right.
these senators who can't say a word.
Right. Oh, yes, that would be interesting. And, there's a lot of pomp and circumstance associated with an impeachment and a trial. And I saw a lot of comments on Facebook, oh, this is ridiculous, it's absurd, look at what they're doing, they're making a mockery. No, they're not. We're following very prescribed procedures set forth in the Constitution or the rules of the House or the rules of the Senate. When I personally watched the clerk of the House, the sergeant at arms, and the House managers walking from the House chamber across the Capitol to be permitted to enter the Senate chamber, that is all done according to prescribed procedures, timing, invitations of the Senate. And it really is a solemn procedure. If you go back and look at the tape, you're not going to find anyone grinning. Maybe inside, but not externally. It was really a very solemn march. And the procedure of admitting them into the Senate, where normally these members of the House would have no right to be in, the Senate goes into the House for the State of the Union because it's a much bigger chamber, but generally, House members are not on the Senate floor. It's a dance. It's a very carefully choreographed dance that gets them in there, gets them permission to speak to the President pro tem of the Senate, which in this situation was Senator Grassley, and to publish the articles of impeachment, which means announcing the publication, announcing the reasons that the articles were passed, and then reading them literally word for word, and then announcing that they have now submitted to the Senate for trial of the President of the United States.
And these rules of this dance were not created yesterday,
No,
but hundreds of years ago.
That's right. Before the first trial, these rules were sort of, some of them come out of the Constitution or implied in the Constitution. Others are rules established way back when in the 18th, 17th, and 19th century, by the House or the Senate, with some changes. But for the most part, are part of our history, a rarely utilized part of our history, but still a part of our history. And, after the articles were published and presented to the Senate, then the Senate did a little bit of a dance. The President pro tem makes certain proclamations. Then the Majority Leader, Senator McConnell, not in his position as we've often heard him as this advocate, but in a very straightforward manner, announces certain procedures, certain rules, certain timing, announces that 2 members of the Democratic Party, 2 members of the Republicans will be selected to escort the Chief Justice into the Senate chamber at noon tomorrow, which was noon yesterday, or actually it was 2 p.m., so that he can take the oath. I mean, he's already taken an oath. He's the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, but he still has to take an oath. He has to swear and take an oath to do impartial justice in the trial of the President of the United States for impeachment. And then once he is now the presiding officer for purposes of the trial, all the senators have to be sworn in to take this oath to do impartial justice. And then they each have to come down and sign their names in the book as jurors. And I am told, and I have heard members of the Republican and Democratic Party yesterday evening, talking about how, will it change votes? Probably not. But talking about how, it hits you at this moment. This is not ordinary stuff. This is different. This is serious. And that is why we have these rules and these procedures and this choreographed dance. It's to announce not only to the public of the United States, not only to those abroad, it's also to announce to themselves, this is not a joke. This is not normal business. This is ultra important and unusual and rare, and it needs to be taken seriously. Now, I can only hope, we do have somebody on line 1, so I'll get to you just a moment, please, Jeff. I do hope, look, I have my biases, and I know how I'd like it to work out. I know it's not going to, but I do hope that everybody, Democratic senators, Republican senators, at the very least, take it seriously and somberly, understanding that no matter whether you believe that this is a witch hunt or whether you believe that the president has engaged in egregious crimes that threaten national security, that regardless of what you believe and regardless of the ultimate outcome, that being the 3rd time this is done in the history of this nation commands attention, commands seriousness, commands you folks to watch some TV next week and into the next few weeks, because you may never see this again in your lifetime. Hopefully you won't. Hopefully I won't. It's not designed to happen willy-nilly. And it's an important distinction in our government, in our system of government, that it is so rare as opposed to many, let's say, the European countries that are parliamentary democracies, where rules are slightly different. I mean, parliamentary democracies have their advantages too, and they have their disadvantages, just like our system. But where they go through changes in power much more frequently, it's not easy here. It's not intended to be easy. It's intended to be very, very difficult to change the president before the next election. And so a lot of you may yell, well, so you should wait. And a lot of others you may yell, no, we should do it right now. That's not even the point I'm arguing. I'm just saying that our government, our Constitution makes it difficult. And so whenever the procedure is utilized, it is remarkable in its seriousness, and it's remarkable if you watch how it's done, in how carefully choreographed it is, so that that seriousness is raised to a level of prominence, so that it's obvious to everybody, even those participating in it, but even more importantly to us as American citizens, that this is something different from the ordinary, and that although we're all human and it's pretty tough, we might want to take a step back from our normal bickering, one way or the other, and just accept the fact that whatever happens, this is a big deal. There will be thousands of books written by political science professors, constitutional scholars, 50 years from now, 100 years from now. Kids in college will be reading about the impeachment of the 45th President of the United States and the other two impeachments, and studying them. This is not like, he signed one law yesterday and that's going to be studied 100 years from now, which it may be. But this one is going to be, there will be classes in colleges on impeachment. There are. But there'll now be new curriculum added as a result of this one. That's all I really want to say.
I think our forefathers dreamed that they wanted it difficult so this would not become a typical political
That's right.
weapon.
And it is a shame on both sides that it seems political right now. I truly don't believe it is, but that's my opinion. And I do want to get to Jeff on line one. So, Jeff, if you're still there, if you hung on with me, I appreciate it. How can I help you?
Well, I don't think the pomps and circumstances included a ceremonial signing of the impeachment documents with your signature embossed in gold on a Bic pen or whatever kind of pen they give out. I doubt they give out Bics, or probably at the cost of taxpayers, a very expensive cross pen or something. And the giddiness in the turning around and handing the pens out to each one of the people that have purveyed what I call the destruction of the Democratic Party.
Let me ask you a quick question. Let me interrupt for a second. Let me ask you a quick question. I understand your point. But when the president signs a significant act into law, don't you ever see in the Oval Office the president, Trump, Obama, Bush, Clinton, whomever?
Did you just not say this is not the normal thing?
No, I'm saying, didn't you ever see in the Oval Office? No. I'm saying, Jeff,
and humble.
Jeff, I'm
celebrating,
saying that in the Oval Office, you often see significant acts signed with multiple pens by the president, and the president handing out those pens to various people that were integral in the legislation. That is a signing procedure that is done for significant events. It's done by the executive. It's done by the legislative. So to challenge as a mockery one is not fair if you're not going to challenge the other.
Well, exactly. You don't celebrate an impeachment.
Who's celebrating?
Or do you? Or do they not celebrate when they hand out the pens? What did they hand out the pens for?
It's because it's a solemn historical procedure, and frankly, if I was there, I would love to get a pen. I would love to get a pen because it's a historical piece of United States memorabilia. I feel like I'm now what's his name that comes after me, Rush, in terms of the over talking.
Who? Oh, that guy.
I'd love to see you sit across from Rush for about 10 minutes.
I would love to sit across. I challenge Rush. I would love to sit across from him for 10 minutes.
All right.
Let's have a knockdown drag out with him.
We're watching the destruction of the Democratic Party go on right in front of our eyes.
Oh, that is ridiculous. And the Republican Party, who was thought to be dead many times, and it's still here.
There's so much socialism in the Democratic Party now, it's become almost communistic.
And what's the Republican Party? I'm not even going to say it. I'm not going to go there.
Now we've gotten into
Thank you, Jeff. I recognize your opinion. I disagree with it. But as Patrick Henry once said, a speech I did in competition.
Where did he play?
For Declamation. Declamation is an event that my son is looking into right now, where you do a famous speech. As Patrick Henry once said, give me liberty or give me death. And there's another famous statement. I may not agree with you, but I'll defend to your death your right to say it. So, Jeff, you have every right to your opinion. You have every right to shout it from the rooftops. You have every right to be wrong. And so do I. Okay? But on that point, I have seen every president sign acts of legislation in the Oval Office with 18,000 pens, which to me seems absurd because that's not a real signature. Okay?
We got pens when we visited the White House with the Dodgers.
Okay.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I see it all the time, and the pens get handed out with the cameras clicking away. And this is the same thing yesterday or the day before with signing the articles of impeachment, which is a prescribed procedure. They were signed. She signed, again, I think it's absurd, just like I think it's absurd when the president does it. Her name, every letter was a different pen. Why is that? That's so that more people can get pens. Oh my goodness, why do they want these 99-cent pens? I understand what Jeff is saying. What I don't understand is his conclusion. Why do they want those 99-cent pens? Because even though she used a different pen for every letter, there aren't that many of them. And these are...
They're going to wind up in a museum.
Well, one of them is going to the Smithsonian for sure.
Oh, yeah.
And others are going to different museums around the country. And others will go into people's collections. One day others will be sold off in auction by Christie's or whatever other big auction house. These are legitimate pieces of American history.
Mm-hmm.
And so why would you want a pen? That's why you would want a pen. I would want a pen for something I don't even agree with because it is a part of American history and because I give a darn. I mean, I do have a political science degree. If somebody were to give me a pen from a major act of legislation, even if I was opposed to that legislation, I'd be happy to have the pen for what it signifies.
Mm-hmm.
It signifies the operation of our government, and that's the history of it. And so and I know it's not just Jeff. There are a lot of folks. I heard a lot of this on cable. For the supposed giddiness of the signing of the articles, I mean, we didn't get to any law today, really, except this is all law. It's constitutional.
I was going
law.
to say, wait, sure it is. Yeah.
For those who are offended by the giddiness, I didn't really see any giddiness. Now, do you think Nancy Pelosi was happy to be signing them? Yeah, okay, let's admit it. And you think the folks behind her were happy that they were being signed and to get their pens? Oh yeah, I'm sure they were. So would I have been. But I didn't see the giddiness. I really did see a solemn ceremony. And I saw the whole thing transpire from there to communicating to the Senate clerk, permission for them to bring the articles to the Senate, and they went down that day, but of course they didn't go into the Senate that day. They delivered documents, made an appointment for the next day, got an invite from the Senate for the House managers to come and present the articles. This was all done to a formality to make more evident the seriousness and the solemnness of the procedure, of what was going on. It wasn't everyday congressional action. It wasn't everyday considering a piece of legislation. This was something different. And folks, what's going to go on the next few weeks? I think it's going to be 3 days a week. The Senate is going to sit as a trial of impeachment. And all the senators have to be there. Because if you're on a jury, you can't choose to go one day and not go another and be allowed to vote. All the senators have to be there. They've got to sit on their tushies and be quiet while the House managers and the president's defense team go through the hours that they are allocated for presentation before the senators can get involved with submission of written questions to the Chief Justice, who's the presiding officer. And then there's a number of hours that the questioning can go on. And then you're going to have all sorts of motions about witnesses, we all know that, and other motions to dismiss. But it's all going to be to very, very clear parliamentary procedures.
Seriously, who I feel bad for are the folks who are running for president who are in the Senate.
And that's
they
really
can't
true.
do a damn thing about it because they'll be sitting in
You're
the
right.
chambers.
You're right. And maybe it hurts them in Iowa and New Hampshire. Maybe it helps them further down the road because what they are doing is, I mean, I know these are the Democrats, but what they're doing is very solemn. It's a requirement. They're fulfilling an extraordinary aspect of their position, which most in those positions never have to fulfill. And it may hurt them early. Maybe it helps them later. Who knows? But yes, it does give a more open field for Joe Biden and for Mayor Buttigieg and for Bloomberg and Steyer. I mean, I'm trying to limit it to the top ones, which is Buttigieg and Biden.
The question that comes to mind: can Bloomberg buy an election?
I certainly hope not. I truly do. It's funny. I took one of those silly quizzes as to see which candidate is more in line with my views. And I was shocked by the results. Biden was way down in the middle of the pack for me, which I really didn't think was the case. And the person who was at the top for me was Bloomberg.
Really? Oh!
He's not like somebody who's at the top, near the top of my list in terms of wanting or believing in, but, in terms of all the positions I was answering, by 1 point, he was at the top, and then there was like a three-way tie with Sanders was way at the bottom, and Warren was further back. So it was Buttigieg, and
I like him. He's sharp.
And
young
Klobuchar.
guy. I like her too.
And I was surprised at looking at the answers. This is one of the things, if you do these silly quizzes sometimes, you find out where people stand and where you stand, and it may give you some information that even surprises you, because what we really do is we listen to them, but we listen through a filter, and we also are listening for who's the most charismatic, which is not really the way you should judge a president.
Exactly.
Bonjour, Karen. She must be in some French country right now on a vacation. Sometimes you realize that there may be people that are more in line to you. Now, does that really mean that on either side of the aisle, we should vote for the person that is most in line with the majority of our positions? I don't think so. I think the Republicans have long got something very right, to my dismay, because I've been arguing this for over a decade, longer. The Republicans, as much as they may have certain positions on gun control and abortion and whatever other positions you may have, they are urged very often to vote on one issue and one issue alone: the Supreme Court.
Oh, yeah.
And the Republicans have understood. Elect a Republican president, and regardless of his position on issues that you like, you don't like, you're going to come out ahead if they get to appoint multiple justices of the Supreme Court.
Because you're packing the Supreme Court.
And I don't think the Democrats ever got that memo, because I've never heard it as critical. I hear it now. Yeah, Roe versus Wade is in jeopardy, and other major, civil rights acts are potentially in jeopardy. Particularly if another justice is appointed by President Trump, and you really have the court tilted, not just for 5 years or 10 years, maybe for 30 years or 40 years.
Depends on the age of...
It is a long time, folks, that these people serve on the Supreme Court. I dare say, a quick observation, I've made it to a few other people. Whatever you feel, Republican or Democrat, I know you're going to have different feelings. whatever you feel about the notorious RBG,
Ah,
Right?
she's great.
she has survived 4 bouts of 4 different types of cancer.
Yeah.
She has survived pancreatic cancer, which took my father 10 years ago this past weekend. She survived that, and she survived it for 10 years. Now, what does that mean? That means she had pancreatic cancer at about the time my dad had it. My dad is one of the statistic that barely makes it, hard to make it even 6 months. The 10-year survival rate of pancreatic cancer is like 0.5%. And
What?
Ruth Bader Ginsburg has made it.
Wow.
I don't know whether she made a deal with the devil. I don't know whether she made a deal with God. I don't know where she made her deal. But man, I'm telling you, if you don't have faith in something, a higher power, this might give you the faith, because there's no way the average person survives 4 different cancers, over 20 years, and is still able to fulfill the rigors of a justice of the United States Supreme Court. There is something odd going on here, and for anybody who thinks that even if Trump were to be reelected, that she's going to be leaving, they're going to be carrying her out hard as a rock, because she's already said she thinks she can do another 5 years. And I said to myself, why did she pick 5 years? She picked it because she's saying, well, let's see, if Trump is reelected, I'm not leaving.
Sure.
So I can do another 5 years. Okay? That would make her, I think it's 94. I hope she doesn't have to make it that long. I honestly, not only do I hope the Democrats win, because I'm a Democrat, and I believe that the last 3 years our country has really been destroyed. I know there are people that disagree, but man, I think we're a laughingstock throughout the world. But, I'd like a Democrat to win just so that she can retire, not because I want her to retire, but because she deserves to spend some years with her grandkids, not reading briefs and writing opinions. She's done more for this country than most, and I would love to see her have some time at the end to enjoy life. It's just amazing. It's remarkable that she's been able to last so long. So, with 5 minutes to go, maybe we should go into our first topic. No, I don't think so. Oh, we have a return here. We got John on line 1. Hey, John.
How's my favorite lawyer doing? All right.
he was just attacked a little bit, but nothing that he couldn't handle.
I think God and the devil are one and the same, and the God and devil's name is Trump.
I don't know. You may want to talk about Ask a Rabbi in the show after this and see what the rabbi has to say about that. I don't think she's going to agree.
Let me explain. He's a God to his supporters, and he's a devil to the Democrats and the free world, I think. But anyway, I think it's amazing that they are supporting the closest thing to a dictator, and they're talking about the Democrats being communists.
I agree.
Because they want to help each other. It's just sad. I have a nephew that never voted in his life, and the last person in the world that should be a Trump supporter. If Trump met him, he'd be the first one that he'd send to Iran or someplace like that. But anyway, to get to the point, I like Bloomberg. I don't know too much about him, but the only thing that bothers me is some of the candidates for the Democratic Party are just, I think, in my eyes, a little bit too old. I don't know if that makes a difference.
Well, it does make a difference, because you have to evaluate how likely are they to serve out their term, because you don't know right now who their vice presidential nominee will be, and are they able to run for a second term, or do we have another free-for-all?
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely right. That's the problem.
And as we've seen in the last few years, I again could be attacked for this, but at an advanced age, your mind can start to go a little bit, because it's a tough job, even with executive time. Electing a candidate in their late 70s, risks a lot, both physically and mentally. And
absolutely
I'd rather
right.
see a younger person.
Yeah, I thought about that, often. I know that the second thing to go is your memory, and I can't remember the first.
The first
thing.
is your looks.
I still got it. I'm still.
Mine went a long time ago, I'm told, by all the ex-wives.
You know what? Let's hope for the best, expect the worst, and we won't be disappointed.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you for calling back, John. Take care. All right. So we have, I guess, 3 minutes. So, Greg, do you know any good lawyer jokes? 2 minutes? Any good lawyer jokes?
Not like the ones you told.
I gave you a few in the beginning.
Yeah,
Cliff,
you
got
did.
any good lawyer jokes?
What happened to the new laws in Florida? What's going on?
We do have it. 2 minutes, folks. I have a correction, or not a correction, but an addendum to make. I was talking to a doctor this week about that e-prescription bill where all the bills are now electronic. The scripts are now electronic.
Yeah.
I was wrong. Oh, my God, you heard a lawyer say he was wrong. Oh. What? Stop the presses.
Wait a minute.
Wait, are there still presses?
We got to get a recording of this. Oh.
There is a 1 year work-in period. The e-prescribing only applies to those doctors that maintain electronic files, patient files. If you're old-fashioned and still keep paper files, you do not have to e-prescribe for 1 year.
Oh, boy.
It does not come into effect. But if you maintain electronic files, you must e-prescribe unless one of the exceptions that we talked about last week happen to apply. So I did want to mention that. He didn't hear my show, but we were talking about it, and the doctor said to me, well, wait a second. There's a little caveat there, and I wanted to let you folks know. Anyway, I hear that music. I can see Chuck Berry now. The big arm, the hook is coming out to get me. The rabbi wants to kick me out of her seat. Nobody likes me. So I'll just say to you, have a great weekend. Have a good week. And I'll see you next Friday again on Ask a Lawyer on WPSL and WSTU in Stuart. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Ask a Lawyer on WPSL, Port St. Lucie, WSTU Stuart, Martin County's Heritage Station.